What's up, everybody? Neil McDevitt here, and today I want to talk about what will the world look like? What will the economy look like? What will civilization as a structure look like after the post-labor economy, or after AGI? This is a topic that is going around YouTube quite well, and I think there are quite a few people who have some thoughtful explanations, but I think the problem is much more nuanced than what everybody is talking about. Largely everybody on YouTube paints this beautiful picture of a utopian future where we have UBI and we live on UBI forever indefinitely, and we just continue as a species doing nothing meaningful that drives society forward, and we just kind of sit here and make sure we don't kill each other. While robots do all the work, we get paid for free, and while some people will have the ability to start like side hustles or whatever, and then like 50% of the population will just live on this supplementary income and try not to kill each other as a human, I don't see that as a viable long-term strategy, and I'm going to explain a few reasons why. So I think it's probably important to start from the very beginning, where AI becomes AGI and it surpasses all humans at all economically driven work. All labor becomes fundamentally automated. And people will say, okay, by the time we hit 15% automation or 15% unemployment, we'll start to probably instantiate some type of UBI for the people who become unemployed. And then as that percentage increases, then we'll have more and more UBI, more and more supplementary income being pushed out into the people who are becoming laid off, which I do think that is a good strategy, because we are going to need, in the short term, some way, shape, or form to keep people from starving and to keep people from killing each other for food. Because at the end of the day, we gotta eat, right? And we gotta protect our family.
May the odds be ever in your favor.
So yes, UBI is a tool that can be used, and I do think it will be used, and it'll be used quite effectively as we go through this transition. But I do think it is also a means to an end. There's a few different things that we can learn from our evolution, and also things such as Darwinism and natural selection and survival of the fittest. And whenever we create something like a super intelligence that runs the world for us, and we just kind of sit here and don't really have much meaning, we can goof off, do whatever we want to. Majority of people will indulge in hedonistic tendencies, and they will have no purpose and meaning in life, and they'll just overindulge in consumption and dopamine because that's what we do. We are fundamentally at a evolved psychological mechanistic level. We are basically monkeys. Like read this book, Evolutionary Psychology by Dr. David Buss. I'm not sure if you could even see that in the screen, but read this book and you will realize like the future, if we could do that indefinitely, is quite obvious, and the answer is extinction. Like, you're gonna tell me that our entire species can sit here and do nothing, and this other species we just created builds the world for us, around us, for us completely, and we just kind of live in it, and we don't really have to worry about anything. That sounds great. It could be plausible. There's no such thing as impossible, right? It could be plausible. But I don't think it's going to be something that lasts very long because of natural selection. Humans that are lazy and just don't do anything will start to die off. There will be not selected for. The survival of the fittest mechanism will take place, and super intelligence will continue, and humans will not. And you might hear that and say, well, what's going to cause that? What's going to cause us to just go extinct? And there's a few different mechanisms here. And the first one, and the most likely one, I think, is transhumanism. There's going to be a certain amount of humans who do decide to either neurally augment themselves, or whenever we hit the singularity, we're going to figure out some way to rearrange the atoms within our body using artificial superintelligence to transcend our current biology into some type of new biology and be a much more intelligent being. This is why Ray Kurzweil always says, whenever the singularity happens, the likelihood of us increasing our own intelligence by 1,000,000-fold is not unlikely. It's actually quite likely if the singularity actually happens by 2045, that is. So, one thing we need to realize, the atoms in my body are 100% different than they were a year or two ago. That means the matter in my body has fundamentally changed 100%, and I am still the same conscious being. There's still the same individual within this plane of existence. So we already know that I can manipulate every single piece of matter in my body and I can still be here. So why can't we increase my intelligence by manipulating the atoms in my body and make me a different type of being altogether with a similar form of consciousness that I previously had, but just raised intellect? It doesn't seem like it's impossible to me. Maybe it's a transition that we'll have to go through slowly over time, but the thing is, humans will go through that transition, and humans will not be humans on the other side of it. And what that means is Homo sapiens as they are today will fundamentally become extinct. But we will evolve into something better. And at that point, eventually we will approach the level of a super intelligent AI, where we will still have benefits of working in society, and we will work with the AI at a very high level. Whether we're pulling levers in different dimensions and manipulating the fabric of space-time, I don't know what it's going to look like. Nobody knows. That's why they call it the singularity. But I think it's quite obvious that the simple answer of humans are just going to live in this utopia forever is quite unrational. And somebody that hears these philosophical things that I'm stating about what could happen after a super intelligent AI blows up and has the possibility of manipulating the matter that is our bodies, what does that even mean? We don't know yet, but we know it doesn't disobey any of the laws of physics. It's completely physically possible, and with the super intelligent AI, I wouldn't put it past us of doing so. But again, this isn't the only option. There's many other options that could happen here. While me personally, I think this is one of the more probable options because we are approaching this technological curve, and if you mathematically model it, it does lead to something that looks like a singularity. Do we know that's true? Not at all. But I'm willing to bet that it is true. And if you look at other physicists like Stephen Hawking or Elon Musk or even Neil deGrasse Tyson, whether you like them or not, we all kind of have somewhat of a similar consensus that this is going to happen in our lifetimes, or depending on how old you are watching this, it is likely to happen within your lifetime. The main thing with this first point is the nature of evolution and the nature of natural selection makes it seem unreasonable that we're just going to exist as the same creature we are today, while these hyper-intelligent beings that are much more intelligent than us build the world for us indefinitely. I think it's inevitable that we do evolve into something fundamentally different eventually. And if we are living in this world that doesn't forcibly make us evolve because we're just kind of hedonistically doing whatever we want to and nothing really matters and nihilism becomes the all-time high because nobody has any purpose, and cults are the number one business model because nobody has any purpose. And people usually go into religions or cults whenever they have no purpose, and there is no death anymore either because longevity, escape velocity, nobody has purpose. Either we're going to kill each other or we're just going to go extinct altogether over a long enough time horizon. Which is why it's much more likely that we transcend our current biology into something fundamentally different than actually have UBI indefinitely. That is just like so ridiculous to me. It almost is like off the table. It seems fundamentally flawed in every way, shape, and form if you look at things from an evolved psychologic mechanistic behavior standpoint. But all of this has just been outcome number one. We also have two other potential outcomes that I can reasonably assume could possibly happen. And I think for number two, a good way to think of it is not just on the meso scale, but on the micro scale of natural selection. We as a species, as humanity, are kind of like natural selection for the AI because we are the ones that are building it. We are birthing this entity into the universe. So we have the ability for market forces and geopolitical forces to kind of design what this life form will look like in the future. And it still is a possibility. Many people will argue against this, but I think it's plausible. It's a very low possibility, but it is possible that on a global scale, we all get scared shitless and decide to pause the entire thing. I do think it is very, very unlikely, especially considering the race dynamics of we want to beat China, China wants to beat us, Google wants to beat OpenAI, OpenAI wants to beat Google. The race dynamics, especially at a geopolitical scale, kind of make it seem pretty inevitable that we're going to achieve something on the scale of a super intelligent, artificial intelligent being that just walks about autonomously. If I were to guess where we're going to end up, I would put my money on that personally. But again, it doesn't mean that's going to happen. I'm just saying what I think is likely. And the last and final possibility is what we are approaching is the Great Filter. So if you're not familiar with the Great Filter, astrophysicists and cosmologists have this thing called the Great Filter, where whenever they look into outer space and they wonder, why don't we see more life out there? And it's because maybe the majority of civilizations that are about to become spacefaring go through this big monumental pivot, this monumental change that majority of them just fundamentally cannot survive. Almost like the singularity, for example. We could be approaching the Great Filters. The singularity, which is going to happen probably within the next few decades, could very well be the Great Filter. And that could be the one pivoting moment in time that says whether or not we exponentially expand throughout the cosmos or exponentially decline and collapse as a species altogether. Again, I don't think this is the most probable outcome. I still think my earlier solution with the singularity and we transcend and almost become an alien-like species compared to what we are today, I think that is likely the most probable outcome. It might sound a little out there for some people, but if you studied this as much as I have, you would probably be like, oh, obviously that's going to happen. As long as the singularity happens in my lifetime, it is reasonable to assume that it's going to happen in my lifetime too. But if you don't believe in the singularity, you probably just think I'm a nut job right now. That being said, jokes aside, these are the three things that I think are most likely to happen. Again, emphasis on the first case scenario. I think that is by far the most likely one. But I do think overall, this will be a net positive for consciousness on this side of the universe. And I'm super excited to see what happens, because I do think it will be good and it's going to be very exciting and it's going to be this is the most interesting time to ever be alive in the past 4 billion years of life on Earth. And we should all be very thankful that we're alive today, because we get to see what was life like before superintelligence and after. And there's only a few generations out of all of the life on Earth that can experience something so profound. And we are part of those generations, I believe. So that about wraps up this video. If you like this type of content, go ahead and subscribe. Like and comment. I have a free community linked in the description below for people who like to talk about AGI, the singularity, how to prepare for these things. We also talk about physics and becoming a polymath, because polymaths are going to win in the future. That being said, that about wraps up this video, and I'll see you in the next one.